I had such an interesting chat with Rob Wilson, the founder of Angels of Freedom, which was established in 2017. Angels of Freedom is a community-based initiative and it's supported by Leeds City Council, British Transport Police and West Yorkshire Police. Their aim is to provide visible support for the LGBT plus community within the Freedom Quarter of the city every Friday evening. Rob speaks very eloquently and I'm sure you'll find the interview very interesting. On this episode of the Light on Leeds podcast, I have Rob Wilson, who's come to speak to me about Angels of Freedom. Hello, Rob. How are you doing?
Hi there, Hazel. I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm quite enjoying this warm weather, although it's a little bit cloudy today. I'm hoping it might break out later on in the day. You never know.
Yeah, as long as we don't have to put the heating back on and the cost of that, we'll all be all right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very much on everybody's mind. Rob, can you tell me a little bit about Angels of Freedom? You're the founder, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We launched back in December 2017, and we have a number of different kind of priorities and focuses, but the main thing is around increasing social opportunities and providing support within the LGBT plus community.
Yeah,
Initially, when we launched, and we still do, we do Friday evening street engagement teams.
yeah,
That's the activity that most people kind of know us for. So every Friday evening, we're down around Lower Briggate, where the LGBT plus bars are, and around Cole Lane. And we're just there kind of in our high vis jackets, so we're quite visible. So even without speaking to anyone, people feel that reassurance that they're a bit safer and there's people there kind of looking out for them. But also, we're quite a happy, jolly crew as well. So, we're always there for a bit of a chat and be a friendly face around the bar scene. For anything that people need around support, or for some people, just the conversation can be enough of support. Particularly when people are feeling kind of quite isolated and lonely, and being in such a busy area and around the bars and feeling like that. Having our team out on the street that they can speak to and kind of check in with every week. It's quite a nice thing for us to be able to provide.
yeah, definitely. Can you tell me a little bit about why you decided it was something that was needed in Leeds?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I can. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, but I can definitely reflect back on a time when I was significantly younger, and first kind of discovering the bar scene, and I think within the LGBT plus community, particularly for younger people, but also older people who are first kind of, recognizing their gender identity or sexuality and part of their kind of their self acceptance. There's quite a big drive to push people towards the bar scene. And, some people think that they're going to go out around the bars and it's just one big, happy, friendly family and community. And there's just going to be like rainbows and glitter and warm welcomes, and that's just not the case. It's a bar scene just like anywhere else. So it can really impact on people. So it's really important to me for us to be able to talk to people about those alternatives to the bar scene.
Yeah,
All of the other social opportunities that there are, all of those other support networks that there are. That you don't have to rely on the bar scene to find people of similar experiences. There are lots of other things out there. So there's definitely that around the self-reflection for it. But also kind of previous to setting up the Angels of Freedom, I've been involved for a few years before that around kind of engagement and support for the wider LGBT plus community. So I was just really aware of some of the vulnerability that happens around the bar scene, for LGBT plus people. Again, around that need to connect and to find your community. So for me, I think it was quite an easy thing for us to kind of to start doing,
yeah,
to help to challenge some of that vulnerability and to kind of to be there. And I think because we do quite a lot of work around social media and kind of raising our profile on social media and, promoting all of these other opportunities and activities. The more our profile grows, the more reach we have to be able to offer that support to people. So it's not just those that we kind of encounter on a Friday night, but it's also those that we engage with and that follow us on social media.
Yeah, of course. So do you think that in some instances, and I mean, obviously everybody's different, so in some instances, perhaps people's first sort of social outing is more around bars, and then your what part of your remit is to point out that it doesn't necessarily have to be around bar culture.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, there's an example that I can probably give here. There was, I mean, it was a couple of years ago, it was before COVID, so probably more than a couple of years now. And we are quite discreet when we're out on the street. We're not going up to people just like, do you need to chat? Do you need help? Do you need anything? We're just there, we're present, and we have a big transparent backpack that is full of sweets. And it's great. It keeps all of our volunteers energized because we just have this massive sugar rush every Friday night. But actually, it helps other people to approach us. It gives
Yeah,
them a bit of an icebreaker to be able to say, "Oh, what's that?" Or, "How come you've got a bag full of sweets?" and this sort of thing. But also for us, it gives us that icebreaker and that opportunity to actually just start a conversation with someone, who could potentially look like they are feeling vulnerable, like they are upset because we've got this big sack of sweets. So we literally could just go up to someone and just go, "Oh, do you want a sweet? How's your evening going?" So,
yeah,
it works really well for us. Uh,
yeah. I can imagine that.
yeah, so there was a few years ago. There was someone that was out, and they were probably in their mid 20s, and they looked upset. You can just see when someone's kind of just really feeling not too good on a night
Mm,
out. And so we approached him, offered him the sweets as we do. And it transpired that he'd been in the army for 10 years, and had just come out of the army. And one of his reasons for joining it at 16 was around his sexuality and not kind of accepting himself. So, placing himself into that kind of hyper masculine environment as part of
yeah.
his denial of who he was. So he'd spent 10 years in the army, kind of trying to hide it and not accept it. And then when he left, he'd kind of he'd had that personal challenge around I need to just accept that this is who I am, and I've hidden myself for 10 years, and I need to just kind of deal with it.
Mm,
So as I said, people feel that they have to then go to the bar scene to be able to do that, and they have kind of certain expectations around that. And LGBT plus isn't one homogenous identity. There's such a massive kind of diversity and variance within that. But he'd kind of expected to go into the bar, have that warm welcome, trumpets, and you're one of us now. And it just doesn't happen. And
no.
he'd gone into one of the venues, he'd been there for a little while. He had a few drinks as well, which often doesn't help in these circumstances. But he'd gone into the bar, and he didn't see himself reflected in the other people that were there. So it just
Yeah.
made him feel really alone. The term he used, he said he felt like he was a freak because he couldn't see himself fitting in with the
Mm,
people that he saw around him. I mean, going into a drag bar for the first experience of going into an LGBT plus venue, you could understand that that's going to have a bit of an impact. But for him, it was quite a severe thing because it was part of this bigger journey that's happened over a number of years. And he was literally suicidal because he was like, I can't deal with this. I can't get over this. So a lot of our volunteers are mental health first aid trained. I'm also suicide prevention first aid trained as well. So we spent about an hour chatting to him, and it was just a case of, highlighting all of the other things that you can do, and, just chatting through the fact that you don't have to fit in, because actually there's not something you have to fit into. It's just
Yeah.
you being you and being comfortable with who you are. And, it just because you're LGBT plus doesn't mean you've suddenly got to start wearing particular clothes and doing particular activities and loving shopping and glitter and
Yeah.
unicorns and all the rest of it. It's just you being you and being happy with who you are. And but also at the same time really understanding that need to connect within the community, and talking about all those different options that there are out there. And I think that really helps you sometimes to connect with people of a similar kind of mindset and background and experience, when it's not around the bar scene. I mean, as an example, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I also run the badminton group, and we do 4 sessions every week. Generally sell out, and we're about to hit 1,000 registered members on that
Wow.
group. So, there is lots of other people out there that want to connect, that want to be part of a community, but don't want to do that through the bar scene. So I think, pointing that out and pointing out those other options that there are, to make friends, is a really important part of what we do.
Absolutely. Do you think that a lot of the sort of disconnect that that person that you were just referring to was experiencing, do you think that's partly because of how the LGBT plus sort of culture is portrayed on TV and in media?
Everything, yeah, definitely, and I mean, I think there's such a difference of experience in how people are brought up, and it's not region by region or even city by city, because people living in one area of Leeds will have a very different experience to people living in another.
Yeah,
Um, so there is obviously all the portrayal in the social media and in kind of in the news and things, and generally on TV programs. Although it is really positive that there's a lot more good,
yeah,
nice, heartwarming kind
yeah,
of things on TV these days. Um, but there's still also that reflection back. I think a lot of people talk about the fact that society is moving on now, and young people are really accepting, and that you can be who you are without judgment, and that is on the increase. It is happening, and that's really great to see. But that's not the same experience for everyone. So I think I'm quite privileged to live in the city centre. All of my lived experiences is around city centre. Um, but I think it's about kind of recognizing that not everyone has that same background and experience, and it's not always a positive thing for some people. I think you can sometimes look at the privilege that you have around your own experiences and just say, I don't understand why it's so difficult for other people. I'm fine. Nothing bad's ever happened to me. Well, that's
mm,
great. It is really good for that individual, but, you're kind of denying the negative experiences that people still have in society.
yeah. Of course, absolutely. And have you, since you started in 2017 and now we're in 2022, what have there been things that you've noticed that have changed, sort of differences? Are you dealing with different problems or issues?
Um, No, no. I mean, obviously, COVID aside, and
Yeah,
a couple of weeks of a couple of years of impact from that, I think we still do exactly the same thing. I think that a lot of it is just that conversation, just people having someone to check in with. I think
yeah,
the only thing that really changes is that more people are aware of who we are and what we do. Um, and I think because of all the other activities that we do as well, actually, it's as our knowledge has increased and our connections within the community and other community groups, it means that we're able to help support a lot more by helping to profile other organisations as well as our own.
Yeah.
So it's not just about us building it all up for ourselves, but it's about us making sure that we're doing what we can to give the opportunities that we've got to other community groups as well. That's a really important aspect for us.
And how do you manage? Is it all volunteers who help with Angels of Freedom, Rob?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're still struggling a little bit with the recovery from COVID. So before COVID hit, we had about a team of about 50 volunteers
Uh huh.
across a range of projects. But probably about more than half of them would be involved in our Friday night teams. So some Fridays we'd have like 10, 12 people out on a night with us. So we got really good numbers. But since COVID happened, people's lives have changed. People have moved
Yeah.
away, changed jobs, started volunteering with different things that were still going on during COVID. So we're still kind of really trying to build up our number of volunteers since we've restarted again last year. So we've currently got about 26 volunteers. So we're working at about half capacity of what we had before. And I mean, admittedly, that can be a struggle sometimes. We always have a minimum of three people out on a Friday night.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a safeguarding thing for our volunteers to always have that number. Touch wood, there's never really been any issues for us, but it's a safe amount of people to have. So if we have less than three people available, then it just means that we're not able to be out on the street that night. But as I say, we are really well known around the bar scene now, and kind of across our social media platforms that we still offer a lot of that support online. So
Yeah.
we might not be on the street every Friday night at the moment, as much as I'd love to be back at that level. It doesn't undermine that support that we've got available because
Yeah.
we have built on the social media side of it.
Yeah, that is good. So, if anybody listening wanted to become a volunteer, would they just get in touch through your website or get in touch with you through social media?
Yeah, through the website would be best. We've got a blog area on the website, and there's a blog post on there all about the different volunteering opportunities that there are. The Friday night street engagement isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. We've had a few people that have come along and done kind of a trial night, and they've enjoyed that engagement. They've enjoyed the engagement where it's been about just having a chat and engaging with someone, but dealing with people who are really drunk and leery
Yeah.
isn't for everyone, and it can be quite off-putting for some people. But at the same time, some others have joined us, and they've been really kind of quite quiet and kind of stayed at the back of the group and things on the evening. But then we've seen them over a matter of a few months keep coming out with us, and it really changes their confidence and being around other people. So, and we're more than happy to support around that. So if someone is kind of dealing with social anxiety and they're not too comfortable around people, but they actually want to get to know the bar scene and they want to increase their confidence there, volunteering with us on a Friday night is a great way to do that. To kind of to feel like you're contributing something back to the community and that you are a part of the community and that you belong there the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing that we've seen with a few people over the years. So definitely encourage people to consider that as an option if they think that would help them personally as well.
And do they get any kind of training or words of wisdom before they go out and do street engagement?
They get lots of words of wisdom from me. No, I mean, we don't do any training beforehand, and we always say to people who are new, it's best just to come along and just experience it. We do a bit of a talk around that, the personal safety element of it. But when it comes to that kind of that engagement on the street, we work in teams. There's always at least three of us there, and we always kind of have a leader within
Yeah.
within that. So there's someone who has had the mental health first aid training. A lot of us had some training through the Safer Leeds partnership around personal safety, but also things to kind of to look out for on the street while we're out to identify vulnerability for others.
Yeah.
The mental health first aid training. We've got a community notice board down outside the viaduct, which they've provided us with. So there's a lot of information on there about the different groups and youth groups and LGBT plus groups of faith and things like that. And then we've got an album of flyers and things in our on our Facebook page. So there's kind of lots of resources for people to be able to link in with. But for most people, the majority, at least 90% of the people that we speak to, they just want someone to talk to. They
Yeah.
just want a conversation, and you don't need training or any kind of background understanding for that. Just an interest in people,
Yeah.
and kind of
Yeah.
being able to kind of actively acknowledge when people are kind of, disclosing something to you. And, you, even if you're not always that confident in yourself, it's something that grows very quickly when you have that kind of engagement with someone.
Yeah, definitely. And I imagine that a lot of stuff you can't really learn until you're on the job in a way.
Yeah,
You know, it must be quite difficult to sort of explain all the circumstances you might come across without actually have been part of the street engagement team.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And and I think we also have when we have people who, because we go out to do that engagement, we go out to have that conversation with people, we go out to be visible, and that's the reason why we do 7 till 11, because we want to have kind of positive engagement with people that will have outcomes. We want it to, we want them to remember that conversation that they've had and
Yeah.
actively engage with us. But after 11 o'clock, when people have had probably a shot or two too many,
Yeah.
that we don't get positive engagement from that, and the support need for people after 11 is very different to what it is that we offer.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, we do come across people on a night out quite early on who are in a similar condition, and we are there to support them as well. We carry bottles of water around with us. We've got t-shirts that people can put on if they've had a little accident, if they've had too much to drink, which enables them to get in a taxi home. So we are there to kind of support around that as well. But I think quite often when it comes to people who are at risk or vulnerable on that evening, on a night out, you can quite often find that it's not people that have just gone out and just intentionally got absolutely wasted. There's usually a backstory. And I
Mm.
find this after 11 o'clock as well, when there's someone that is that drunk. There's a backstory, there's a reason why they've done that. And it's not just about them being irresponsible and not being able to handle the drink. They've had the dealing with a family fallout, or the falling out with a friend or the partner. The situation I talked about earlier about LGBT plus people going to the bar scene to kind of discover their community and as part of their journey of self acceptance. Quite often, that takes a lot of nerve for them to do that, and a
Yeah.
lot of people will find that nerve by getting drunk.
Mm.
And so they'll be out in the city centre with friends or with colleagues or whatever. They'll have a few drinks, and then through that drink, they'll pick up the courage to go down to the bar soon. And they'll keep drinking because they're nervous, and they
Yeah.
become vulnerable because of that. Um, so I learned very early on, even before launching the Angels, when I used to do some stuff with the Street Angels, is not to be judgmental about people who get in that condition on a night out,
Yeah.
because I mean, however they've done it, and even if they had done it because they were being irresponsible, right there and then in that moment, they need help, and they need a compassionate approach, and that's the most important thing in the moment.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And you spoke a little bit about COVID. How did that affect your work? Were you sort of ready for it? Did you see it coming?
Well, yeah. When COVID hit in that first lockdown, it stopped everything that we did because nearly everything that we do was about that face to face contact. It
Hmm.
was about being in the community. It was about being around people. So we didn't do any activities at all during that first lockdown, and throughout most of 2020. But then when the bars started reopening properly, we restarted our Friday evenings. We'd already moved because we do an a parent of LGBT children's peer support group. So we'd relaunched that online. So we still had that safe space for parents and guardians to be able to kind of come together to talk, which again was a really an important impact from COVID that a lot of people don't really or aren't really aware of, is the fact that if young people were at home sometimes with parents who didn't accept who they were.
Yeah,
It's added like quite a bit of extra trauma to some young LGBT plus people who've experienced that, who haven't had that escape from what they were experiencing at home. And that's probably the same for most young people who are having family difficulties. It's not exclusively around their sexuality or gender identity, but it was definitely something that's impacted. But on the flip side, I think having the closer connection with families has also resulted in some young people disclosing and coming out to their family a lot earlier than they might have done otherwise.
yeah,
So that the connection that they've had with their family through that has also been quite a positive as well.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, it was just such a crazy time for everybody.
It was, and I think we just need to try and hold on to some of the positive outcomes that there were from COVID. As I say, those connections, the different ways of working, the digital advances that we've seen.
Yeah,
I mean, I've definitely seen that, being able to not leave my home, but be able to offer so much support and engagement and development work. Um, Without having to dash from one end of the city to the other.
yeah.
So yeah,
Because that kind of didn't seem possible before, did it? It's like I used to, it seemed perfectly normal at the time. It seems absolutely deranged now. But I used to invite guests to my home and record them here,
yeah,
whereas now I do everything online. And actually, from an access point of view, and for a safety point of view, and ecologically, everything, it's better to do it like this. But I hadn't even considered it
no,
before.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I'm involved in a few different things, um, and being able to kind of juggle all the things that I do in my own time and personally what I'm invested in, alongside doing a full time job and being able to kind of to juggle the two and to have it all fit in together. I can manage that a lot easier now that I'm online. That
Yeah,
it's things like this, that before I would never have been able to do so easily.
yeah,
Yeah, so we have some positives as well as the awful side of it as well. I think there's definitely a lot of things that people need to keep in mind from it, that we've
mhm,
learned from it, and that we don't let go of some of the positive outcomes, because it's been such an awful time for so many people and the impact of it. We just have to keep together as a community, I guess.
yeah. Definitely keep connecting and keep
Yeah,
communicating with each other.
yeah.
Rob, I could tell from your accent that you may not have lived in Leeds all of your life.
No, that's correct, and I did think that about your accent
You're
when you
correct as
did
well.
it as well. So I suspect that you're probably Middlesbrough.
Close, Stanley County, Durham.
I nearly said Durham, so yeah, that's good. And you would guess from mine.
Hartlepool?
Oh, that's no. So I'm
Oh,
actually from Newcastle.
all right.
Yeah, but no, not many people get that. I usually get people who aren't from the area, they'll guess that I'm Scouser or Irish.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I should have known, Rob, because my stepdad's from Newcastle. I hear him every day.
yeah. So I lived on the Scottish borders for a while when I was a kid.
Ah,
I also lived down in Surrey for a couple of years and then lived in Sunderland for a couple of years before I
ah,
moved to Leeds. And I've been to Leeds. I've been in Leeds for about 16, 17 years now. So yeah, I don't have the accent, but it's just there's that twang, isn't there, of an
yeah.
accent that you'll pick up every now and again on certain words, and you just go, "Oh yeah."
It's whenever I say eight.
Yeah,
So you've definitely lived here long enough then, Rob, to answer the three questions I ask every guest.
I have indeed.
The first one being, what would you say is great about the city of Leeds?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've been here 16 years now, and the majority of that living in the city centre. And you know, compared to other places, and particularly other places where I've lived, the fact that the city centre is quite compact, it's not
Yeah,
sprawling, and it's not anonymous. You know, you can walk through the city centre and see regular faces, and you know, you see them quite often. So it's that feeling for me of still being in a community of people, despite
yeah.
being in a city centre. I think that's quite unique with Leeds. Um, it's not something I've experienced in any other city that I've lived in.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And if you had to choose something, I mean, obviously we'd have to twist your arm, Rob, but if you had to choose something not so great about the city, what would you choose?
Well, funnily enough, I have a positive from this, which is also a negative.
Okay.
So I definitely would not have this any other way. But the continual growth and the development around the city and around
Yeah.
Leeds can be a challenge. As I say, I live in the city centre, and I remember the very first drive to Leeds when I was coming over here to see if I wanted to move here. And the first thing I noticed was all the cranes on the skyline,
Yeah.
and it really stood out to me. And those cranes are in very different places now, but they're still there. You
Yeah.
know, it's still growing, it's still developing, and I think that can present some challenges around the city. And you know, particularly if you're living right in the city near any of the works. But I wouldn't want that to change because you know that growth and that development and that change is such a positive thing for the city that you know I don't mind it, but it can be quite frustrating for people. So that would definitely be my answer to that question.
That's a good answer because it's positive and negative at the same time. I like it. And if somebody had been a resident of Leeds for a very long time, would you be able to tell them about something that you would consider to be a hidden gem that they might never have heard of?
Yeah, it's a funny one. This when I thought about this question, because my answer isn't a place or an event or
Yeah.
cafe, bar, shop, or anything like that. It's a website.
Okay.
So I would definitely answer with the Leeds inspired website.
That's a very good answer.
No, I know you'll be aware of it already through social media,
Yeah.
but I just think that you know it's such a fantastic resource for the city to find out what's going on, and you know obviously as I say, a lot of what I talk about is that community connection and networking, and you know meeting friends and doing activities. Well, Leeds Inspired is something that I'm forever signposting people to find out what's going on. And there's such a variety of opportunities in Leeds and right across Leeds, not just in the city centre, that you can find out from there. And there's so many quirky offerings, and there's always something to do. So some people can just think, you know, I'm looking for something to do. I'll have a look to see what's on at the theatre or at the cinema, or you know, quiz or darts down at the pub. But
Yeah.
actually, there's so much that you can do and get involved with and attend. And the Leeds Inspired website is just the ideal place to find out what those options are.
It really is. And I think as well for if you're a person who's putting on an event, it's also like a really easy system to be able to advertise your event. Like, it's, you know, it's not in any way pejorative, and or, you know, you don't have to be particularly tech savvy or anything. And I really like that about it, because it makes it just so accessible for anyone to put on what they're doing. And like you say, then the result is this amazing resource of such a wide range of things that you can get involved in.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for coming along and speaking to me today, Rob. What will you be doing with the rest of your, I suppose your evening's already taken up, what will you be doing this afternoon?
Yeah, so I'm back at work this afternoon, although I have lunch to look forward to, and there's a curators market in Trinity for small businesses. So I'm going along to buy some chocolate bars from Frankly Delicious, which is a homemade chocolate company that I love the chocolate of. Yeah, that'll be my afternoon. And then obviously this evening it's Friday, so it's Angels of Freedom.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to put lots of information in the podcast notes so people can click through and get involved if they would like to. And I hope to see you out on the streets at some point. You never know.
Indeed. It'll be good to say hello.
Thanks very much, Rob. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Hazel. Bye-bye.
I'm sure you'll agree that Rob and his Angels of Freedom are doing really valuable work in Leeds. The featured track on this episode is aptly called Leeds, from an EP by Moses Rubin. It was entirely dedicated to the city. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and if you'd like to find out more about Moses or Angels of Freedom, there are links in the podcast notes. Enjoy!
Evenings of teas and recordings, Yorkshire is somewhere to learn. Leeds had initially inspired some trouble, settling down was a strange. Silently cruising the river, found out myself in the storm. It's getting dark and the wind keeps whispering, gradually taking my home. We didn't know it, and we're probably getting old here, losing time and our belongings, as we'll soon be heading home again. We regaze often to mirror as we drift down by the arcades, loaded with stuff to fill our shelters, surrounded by temples of shame. While owls made of gold in Millennium Square guard our souls as we play. Parkinson building, gently stalking, we wait for the bus down the stairs. We didn't know it, and we're probably getting on here, losing time and our belongings, as we'll soon be heading home again. Unfamiliar now, though at first sight we looked a bit scared. The snow on the rail was the market loud as the smell from the fire at the Duck and Drain. We didn't know it, as we're probably getting old here, losing time and our belongings.